UK there's a phrase that everyone knows. It's written on the floor all over the city of London, and you hear it when you're waiting to catch a train. And the phrase is,
Mind the gap.
the message "Mind the Gap" exists as a caution to warn people when crossing. There's usually a yellow line. When crossing the line to board a train, be careful. Leave the gap empty. Have you noticed that we have increasingly eradicated gaps? How often do you find yourself waiting in line and automatically reaching for your phone? Sometimes at restaurants, I've observed there's a table and everyone sat around that table is looking at their phone. It is as if what is happening on their screen is more interesting and more important than the person they're having dinner with. There is an exchange going on. We are missing what is in front of us and instead looking at screens. These moments, these gaps, used to be normal, and now we have filled them. Now don't get me wrong, tech isn't all bad, but like so many things in life, it gives and it takes away. And so often we are less aware of what is being taken away. Often you'll hear tech companies promote a product or an app, and they'll tell you that this product will enable our users to do this, and this product will enable our users to do that. And it's interesting language that's being used to label customers users. The only other industry that does that are drug dealers. Is it possible that gaps may help us connect with God? In the Old Testament, the first half of the Bible, there's a book called Psalms, and it's ancient writing, but it's timeless in its wisdom. And in Psalm 46, there's a passage and it says, "Be still and know that I am God." Such an interesting instruction. It is saying, stop, pause, reflect, look around, and then you will know God. What a profound offer after such a simple instruction. Know God? Is that even possible? If you ask some people, they would say, of course it's not possible to know God. That's a ridiculous idea. But if you ask other people, some of those people will say, yes, it is possible. And often they tell stories where they had an experience, a moment where they met God, they met Jesus, and it changed them. But if you asked the second category, would you like to know God more? Would you like to know God better? Would you like to know more of His presence? Most of them would say yes. I wonder if there is a connection between the being still and then the knowing God. So the psalm begins, "Be still," which sounds really simple. But remember those gaps and our tendency to fill every single gap, to reach for our phone at every single moment? It appears being still is not as easy as it sounds. But it's loaded with that promise, be still and then you will know God. Jesus taught something similar. Jesus said, if you seek for me, you will find me. Which could be said in reverse, if you don't seek, you won't find. There is a promise there is a connection, there is a relationship, there is a dynamic between seeking and finding and being still and knowing. Gaps can be a wonderful gift. The gap can be a creative space where we find things that we wouldn't have found, or we see things that we might otherwise have walked past. And sometimes endless stimulation erodes creativity, erodes what we find in those gaps. There are times when I find myself and I'm having a meal, but I'm thinking about what I've got to do next. And it's as if my taste buds don't taste the food as much because I'm thinking about the next thing. And there's other times I wake up in the morning and I'm in that moment where I'm not really awake and I'm not really asleep. And sometimes I discover things, I come up with ideas or solutions or fixes sometimes to what were complex situations that I was struggling to resolve. And it's as if in those moments I have some of the best ideas. Those moments before the busyness of the day has started, before the activity of my calendar and my to-do list has landed on me. In that gap, there is something very good that is happening. I recently read that approximately 6 million pages are added to the internet every single day. And somewhere in the region of 60 billion pieces of junk mail is sent in the post every year. I wonder if the excessive noise of modern life sometimes works against us in regard to clarity and creativity. I don't know if you've ever had those days where you're super busy, you leap out of bed in the morning, you go from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. And there's something slightly exciting about that, the adrenaline. But I wonder what we miss along the way in our pursuit of galloping from one moment to the next and to the next. I'm not convinced we were made that way. In the New Testament, we read of the life of Jesus. In this account written by Matthew, we read of one of the weeks of Jesus' ministry, and it's a week when everything is going right. There are crowds gathering, Jesus is teaching, and incredible things are happening in the crowds. People are being healed and freed, and there are miracles happening everywhere. If you were there, if I was there, we would never want that moment to end. However, Jesus knows the importance of gaps. And in the busyness and in the activity of that week, people haven't even had time to eat. So Jesus leans in and he gathers his team, his disciples around him, and he gives some advice, which is the strangest advice. It is bizarre. Some might consider it crazy on the backdrop of such success and good times. He says, let's get away. Let's withdraw to a quiet place to be still. Let's get some rest. At the peak of success, Jesus is saying, let's get out of here. This is not the first time Jesus has done this. There are other moments recorded in the life of Jesus where he would withdraw to a quiet place to rest, to pray, and to be still. It is as if Jesus looks around sometimes at the activity, even the good activity, and says, wait a minute, there's no gap here. You need a gap. We need a gap. And in the absence of one, I am going to make one. So mind the gap, or notice the gap, embrace the gap. The gap is your friend. Jesus is saying, come with me. Let's withdraw to a quiet place to pray, to rest, to be still. Let's be still and see what happens next. you.